Hello everyone, in this video I'm going to review this HART tutorial. This is a really great tutorial for someone who wants to learn organic surface modeling. The entire object is designed basically visually, kind of you eyeball it, but more importantly it's designed with surface modeling where you play with the existing faces and add edge loops and so on. If you scroll down over here, you will see that everything that is used is basic tools. So we actually start with a cube. That's with any type of surface modeling, be it box modeling or anything else. Usually you start with some basic primitives. So actually we start, the entire shape starts with just a cube. There's no drawing, no other shapes. Everything stems from a single cube. And we managed to take the single cube to turn it into this. And we do that mostly with basic things. So if you think about everything that you see over here are either transformations like move, scale, rotate. Actually you don't see rotate over here individually, but rotate is used as a part of advanced settings in extrusion. But then you think about adding faces, like in added details we have adding edge loops, and we have loop selection, advanced selections, we have extrusion. So it's all very basic surface editing tools, so really basic tools, and yet you get this something very nice. The other thing here is that these features are actually give you a very low poly object, so you have only like 17,000 faces, which is really nothing for this object as opposed to alternative modeling methods that would have ended up having hundreds of thousands of faces for a similar object. So before we get started, I want to show you just one more thing over here, and that is the settings in the preference. And here's the thing, so let me show you. If I'm going to take a basic cube, I'm turning it on like this, I'll turn on the edge mode, and you see we see the vertex mode. You see we see these vertices. For hover turns red, if I select them turns yellow. We can clearly see these settings over here, but if I go to the preference, you can scroll down all the way in the preference. You see we have over here the helper size. If I make it small, it's basically not visible. Medium, it's a little bit visible, but not nearly as good as it should be. And large is the only thing visible. I actually asked SelfCAD to increase these sizes. I think they're too small. I think small should be the size of medium, medium size of large, and large even bigger. But nonetheless, I'm saying this because when I tested this tutorial first, there's going to play a lot with vertex selection and other selections, and mostly vertices is the issue. Edge selection was fine even with medium, but vertex selection often is hard to see unless you turn it to large, and this is locked while playing a tutorial. So it's a good idea to turn around beforehand. Okay, you can also play with gizmo size over here, but gizmo size is actually good enough. So I like it medium. See large, to me it's too large. I think medium is perfect. You can obviously also turn on dark mode. Why not? I've never done a tutorial using dark mode. So let me just turn on dark mode. You see you can play with these settings. I'm just going to do this tutorial on dark mode. Okay, and these settings are saved, but you cannot change it while tutorial. So now let's go load the tutorial. I have saved it over here, and we're going to find this HART over here. Okay, hope tutorial looks nice in dark because, as I said, I've never done a tutorial in dark mode. Okay, so we start, as I said, with a basic cube, and all we do over here is we move up the y-axis to 15. That's all we do basically, and we confirm it. So we just moved it up a little bit to give it some space to model over here. And I'll repeat something I've said in many other tutorials, that SelfCAD puts everything on top of the grid. Make sure it cannot go below or sideways outside, because this is basically something that makes objects being lost and difficult to track. So SelfCAD kind of makes sure it's everything kept in this box. You can change the box size in the workspace settings, but yeah, so that's basically it. It's on purpose. So if you need to extend over here, you just need to lift it up so you give it room. Okay, so now what we do over here is, as I said, we start with the basic cube, but now we want to add some more details to be able to stretch. And for that, we're going to use round object. Round object is we can use the basic setting, just one, and finalize it. This is a kind of a utility function whenever you want to do low poly box modeling, or in this case, organic modeling. It adds you can round it and relatively very low faces. We have only 24 faces. And it gives you details to kind of just add uniformly details all over, and rounds it so you can start working on it. So with that said, we basically have now a basic shape, and we're just going to select here. So we're selecting these edges over here, and we're just going to start moving them. So that's basically what we do. We enter over here in the X 44, simply move it, and then we're going to move the Y to 120. And it doesn't really matter the exact measurements. I mean, this is eyeballing it. So we can do now the same thing with others. We deselect and move this one. And I'm just going to do a few of them, and then I'm going to start doing next, automate them, because this is basically just redundant, the same idea. And while we have this on, we're switching on to scale, and we're going to scale Z to 90, and we deselect them. Now we select these edges, and we're going to repeat the same ideas. We're going to scale the Z now to 50, actually make it shorter now over here, indent it, and go back to move, and move X to 55. So 58, I'm sorry, it's 58, and then Y to 0. So we basically moved it down all the way and deselect. Okay, so I'm just going to click now next. It's basically going to do the same thing. It just reshapes the object over and over, and it gives it a basic setting of what needs to be done over here. And then we have over here this one. And okay, so now we are done with the basic setting as much as we can do with the amount of faces we currently have. And now we're going to actually set the center, but for that it's difficult to select everything. We're going to use loop selection. So we'd go to advanced settings, and then we turn on loop selection, and actually first deselect this one. Doesn't matter which one, why it's done first, this. Okay, but you turn on loop selection, and now we're going to select here. Look, it's hard to see here. If I rotate it, you'll see actually here is what you need to select. So sometimes these selections in the gizmo is hard to see, but basically the idea here is you click one and then its neighbor, and then it selects the entire loop. So in this case, we select a loop, and we're going to do the same thing we did before, which is basically just scale them. We're going to go to scale, and we're going to scale the Z to 125, set them, and then close it. Okay, and now we're going to deselect it. So now we are done with this, but now we want to add more loops over here. So there's a difference between loop selection and then adding a loop, and this is actually called edge loops. That's how it's called in Blender or other software. If you look at this technique, it's basically called edge loops. So we're going to go to edit details and modify. Modify is always the things that considers about adding details. Doesn't matter if you do extrusion, inset, all of these things are adding actual geometry. So in modify, it's also divided into categories. It's doing functional, like that you always see exactly immediately what you're doing. You're extending it, you're doing stuff, or you're rounding it, a different type of edits. Now we're going to go here to the last segment, which are basically just cutting segments and adding details. So we're going to go to edit details tool, and over here we're going to turn on the option automatic loop finding. So what this gives me is that it finds automatically a loop very similar to what we did before in the selection edge loops, but it will find it and then add the loop. So let's take a look. So if I hover here and I move it here, look what it's doing. It found the entire loop and it added this loop. And then we can do the same thing over here. We're going to move it here and move it over here and add the loop. Now I just want to say one thing, that this is eyeballing it. So it's just random. We actually snap the centers. If you see over here, we give it a green line when I'm in the center of it. And you know, if you click this and then you're going to go, it will click the center between these two. It's always good when you want to make it centers, but you can also make it, you know, obviously wherever you want, or you can also enter exact measurements. You have over here this box with measurements. So it could be used more in a technical way as well. But nonetheless, what we did is we just added these loops, and now we're going to repeat the same thing. We're going to select these faces, we're going to move it, scale it, I mean, everything. Now we went on, what we did is we turned on the face mode, and we're going to select these faces, and we're going to use inset. So what inset is doing, it's basically doing the same idea. It adds faces, but it kind of adds faces to all of this in place, just insets it. That basically the name explains itself. And what we do over here, we have the selected faces, and we're going to turn on to vertex mode. Now, this is what I said before. If you're going to have in the settings, this is blocked now, you can't turn it on. If your setting is going to be small or even medium, you're going to have a hard time seeing this. So it's important it's large. But the way it works over here is in SelfCAD that if you go down a level, it always carries over the selection. So because we were in face mode, we select these faces, and I go down to vertices, it automatically selects all of the vertices that were part of the previously selected faces. but we don't need all of them, so we need to deselect them. So I can deselect them in two ways. I can click on it to deselect, simply click on this, or I can use marquee selection while holding down my control key. So I'm going to hold down the control key and do marquee selection. So this basically this basically deselects them. Okay, so now what we're going to do is the same idea. We have these faces, and we're simply going to scale it Z to 50 and scale it down. And now I need to deselect here, and I have to zoom in to see. You see, I can click on this one to deselect, or it's easier marquee, I think. Also deselect this one and this one, and now we need to set the Z to 40. So it's basically just reshaping this section over here, and we need to deselect again one where it's actually hard to see where I need to deselect. So I'm just going to click next. It's actually hard for me to see where it is. Okay, so now we need to select the one that is green over here. We select this one, and we're going to go to move and move it to minus 8. Okay, and we're closing transformation. So now we're going to turn back on face mode, and we're going to select these faces, and we're going to extrude this. So as you see, what we did is we have this nice quads over here, and we turn this, instead of making two shapes and then connecting them using Boolean operation, stitch and scoop, or using more of the advanced tools like Loft, I think so you do typically, they would give you a very messy object and high detail, very much high poly. The benefit of these are you kind of take a little bit more time to, or not even more time, but you just shape the geometry, and you get a very low poly, things like that. And that's basically why this is low poly, and this is called surface modeling. You basically just edit the surfaces. Okay, so now we're going to extrude that by 20, but we also need to add transformations. But in this case, we're going to do it instead of extruding it, closing the tool, and going to transformations. We're going to use advanced settings to add the additional transformations. And here we have an add an option, and I see here these labels here are not very good in the dark mode visible. So we have to set the X to minus 15, and now we're going to add another option, and we're going to set it to scale, and then we're going to set Z to minus 10, and we're going to click apply. So the benefit of apply is that it allows me to make a second set of settings, without exiting the tool. So I want to say something about these advanced settings. So usually when you think about advanced settings over here, if you've seen it in other tutorials, it's usually used for the purpose of the repeat, where repeat allows you to do many repeated, kind of create a pattern to do things like that, and similar to what you see in the copy offset, where you can make patterns to do things over here. But over here in this case, it's nothing. The repeat is just one, so it's just one set. But the idea is just to add transformations. So that's basically all it is. We're just going to add transformations, and X would be to minus 5. It's just a matter of, oops, I didn't type in here. Okay, and we're adding an option to scale, and it's setting it to minus 4 by minus 4. Oops, I think dark mode is not very good on this. Okay, we apply, and then at last we're gonna add another one. We're gonna make this to rotate now, and Z to 22, and we're gonna add a scale to minus 4 by minus 4, and we're gonna finalize it. Okay, so what we did over here is basically just create this entire shape, extrusion and transformation, but we did it in the tool, the transformation directly. And now we're going simply to delete these faces. I click on my key to delete, and we need to add, this is just a surface now, there's no thickness, but we cannot add thickness now because we're still going to cut others, so we're going to later add thickness to everything. Now we're going to go again to vertex mode, and we're going to select highlighted regions. I need to rotate the C, so it's actually here. So I need to select this vertex, and we're going to move it. I'm just going to click next to automate that. And now we deselect them. We select this vertex over here, as you can see, and we move it. So it's basically just very basic details. And now I'm going to go again to add the details to add another edge loop. So you see over here, we have this edge loop, and adding an edge loop over here. and finalizing it. So we added some more details over here. Turn on face mode, and it's almost identical, the same flow that we did before. We inset to 4, level 4, we finalize it, and then we go down to vertex mode. You can see the red ones that we need to deselect. So we deselect this, and we have more to deselect here and here. And now we're going to scale these. So I'm just going to click next. And again, the same thing. We deselect, select, and we basically shape this, make it into kind of circular. It's not exactly circular, but basically like this. And we're going to repeat the same flow using transformations. I'm just going to click through next. In advanced settings, it's almost identical to, I should make it a little slower so we can see what's happening. But we basically just extrude this, and as you can see over here, we can read over here the options. Is we have to add settings of scale, and we setting the scale level. We adding a rotate and setting apply, and we basically move it over here. Then we change extrusion value to 40, and again advanced settings, we are setting the adding an option, we adding a scale, and -2, so the X and Z, so -2 by -2, and adding another option to rotate, and X to 25, and we click apply. And now we adding another option, I think this is the last one, let's see, scale, to -1, and let's see, rotate, X to 25, and we finalize. Okay, so we did basically the same idea, but they're not a pattern. It's not like the rotation is exactly the same, just steps, because the rotation was different, the scale was different, so it's kind of unique each set. That's why we needed to do so many times. And now we do the same thing, delete these faces over here, and go again to vertex mode and start playing with this one. We select this one and start moving this. So I'm just gonna walk them through, and it's basically the same idea we're gonna do now. I'm just gonna click them through. So we're repeating almost identical the same flow. We have these faces over here. We shape it to the circular shape that we want it to be, and we select them, and then we extrude them with basic transformations. So let me just walk through, and we delete them. So this is basically all what we did. So we took, just to recap a little bit what we did over here, we took a cube, we added a round object to give it some more details, kind of like a sphere, but a little bit different. We shaped it as much as we can. We added some edge loops and shaped that, and then we shaped individual pieces and extruded and modified them, other piece, and we deleted all of them. We deleted the final faces, and now we are about to finalize this setting over here. We need to select here a face. Here we need to select these. We're gonna end up kind of finalize the last touches. So the Y to 114, and we're activating edge mode, and we're selecting these edges. So it's just to X to 76. It's just playing with it, making it look nice, and then we're going to scale it, and Z to 84. Okay, and now what we need to do is highlight over here. So you can see we have more highlights to do. Select all of these. Let's see, this, and this, and we're gonna move them to X to 50. X to -50, I'm sorry, -50, and closing it, and deselect them. Okay, so what we're gonna do now here is we're gonna go to add thickness. So now we are done basically with the basic shaping, but these are all surfaces, they have no thickness. So now we're gonna add wall thickness. We're gonna go to add thickness, and we're gonna make it a -3. -3 means that the thickness will go inside in the shape. It wouldn't take out the outside, it will just go inside. And this basically added, made them thick of 3, and we finalized them. And now we're going to select here faces. So we go to face mode, and we're going to go again to advanced selection to turn on loop selection, and we're going to select these. This is just now for cosmetics, for coloring. So we're selecting this, also this, and this loop, and then we select this and this loop over here also. So basically just select loops, and you see this is one of the benefits of using quads. So we can basically, they're all so easy to select, and we're just going to color them now. So we're just going to select this color, finalize, and deselect, deselect all, let's see, deselect, oh, deselect all, okay. Never seen use this in a tutorial before, didn't realize it's a deselect all used. That's interesting. And now we're going to select another loop. Okay, that's actually interesting. I've never seen this, because normally when I deselect, this panel actually closes, because this panel, it's not like if you have seen before, we have a selection, we move from move, rotate, scale. Actually not rotate, we use move and scale mostly. The panel stays open, but this one, if you exit the selection, the panel will close, because these are custom panel, dynamic panels. It shows based on what you have selected. So if you turn everything off, then it would be off. But interesting, if you do deselect all, it's, yeah, keeps it open. It's actually new for me. I didn't realize that. But nonetheless, we select here the new loops, and again, it's the same thing, just coloring here. And now we're gonna color this one over here. And again, deselect all. And then, oh, we just closed the panel. Okay, so now we're going to go to actual material selection. So we go to material selection, and material selection allows you to select material. So what's happening now here is that we have three materials. Is considered everything. Could be a texture, could be anything, or it could be just color. So in this case, we have the blue color, the red color, and then we have this default color. So doing it by material, you see we have three materials. We just select this entire material. So no need to do loop selection or something. We just select this material, and now we're gonna color this as well. Let's see, it's using picker. We click on picker to custom color, and we need to type in a value. Okay, so instead of typing, I'm just gonna click next, and then we confirm it. And that's basically it. We turn off the selection, and we turn on this mode. And so now you have what you see over here is, it's hard to see because I can't switch, but you have actually, see over here, you have like 560 edges, 278 vertices, and polygons are roughly about the same range, but it's not very smooth. So what we're going to do now is again round objects. We started the first, if you remember, after creating the cube, the first task was round objects. Now we're going to do it again, but now we're going to add the value a little bit more. We're going to round it by 3, finalizing it, and that's basically it. You have the object completed, and it looks really smooth, and it's only 70,000 faces. If you go back, undo, this is only 280 faces, as you can see. There's another thing here I want to show you, that you can actually turn on smooth, and it will look the same, almost the same, but it's not exactly the same as rounding it. So if you do round object, that makes it smooth, and you can make it even smoother by turning on the smooth shader. But that's basically it. 17,000 faces, a joke for a complex object like this. And this is everything you need to know about organic surface modeling. I hope you learned something new, and please let me know in the comments if you want me to show anything else. And thanks for watching. Bye.